Once upon a time, I was broke as hell. How broke was he? Real broke. And that bothered me because I was always the dude that did everything right. Got the good grades, you know what I'm saying? Worked hard. But when everything went wrong and the debt piled up too high, I felt like a failure. What I wanted was just to start over. Not just financially, but deeper down, I wanted to feel like a new person. I was tired of feeling like I was living in a past I didn't ask for. I'm tired of being haunted by phantoms. So I walk into the post office one day and I'm mailing a special letter to the government. And when I go to check out, all my cards are frozen. I can't pay to send the letter. The clerk calls out the obvious. I think there's something wrong with your card. I say, well, try it again. I can feel the crowd staring at me. They're burning a hole in the side of my neck. I keep trying different cards. Nothing happens. The line grows. I say, you know what? I'll just mail this later. And the clerk says, but are you going to pay for this envelope though? Oh no, I get you want to mail the letter later, but are you going to pay for this envelope though? I say, no, I don't even need it. And the clerk yells as if looking to, like she's trying to get security's attention. She says, yeah, but are you going to pay for this envelope though? Now I can see the line is looking at me crazy. The envelope costs $1.89, but I got $2 in my wallet. So I say, sure. I was like, sure. But when she hands me the smallest dime and penny back, it feels like she's giving change to the homeless. That's when I plan. That's when I vow to never feel like this again. And it would be cool. We wouldn't be having this conversation if that was the end of it. We wouldn't be even having this conversation if a situation could just stay in the past where it belongs. But to make matters worse, the $2 missing from my wallet now was a reminder that I didn't even need to be in here in the first place. I didn't get to mail the package. So now you just came in here. I just came in here and lost the last $2 that I had. Mm. Over the next few days, I get bombarded with instant replays over and over and over again of that clerk saying, but are you going to pay for this envelope though? And the people in the crowd. It's like every time the thought hits, embarrassment erupts in my chest, crawling up my throat. I get to asking, how did I let things get to this? I start asking what I could have did differently. And as a whole bunch of I should have known thoughts come to me, that's when I start blaming others, especially parents, for not preparing me enough, not teaching me better, not teaching me to avoid certain opportunities I wasn't prepared to receive. They should have Maybe they should have helped me cultivate my talents sooner so I wouldn't be in this mess. Funny how one memory triggers a pattern of emotional wounding that puts me back in a state of survival. Yes, we will be working with this. Had me trying to overthink a future that I cannot possibly predict, as if thinking more about it would allow me to do something more about it. All to avoid a feeling of failure again. All to avoid constantly being haunted by these phantoms. One day, as I'm standing in the mirror, I realized that I'm just looking in the mirror and I'm realizing that, I'm the only one adding meaning to this situation. I'm the only one adding meaning to the situation, meaning to this memory instead of adding love to it. I was the only one holding myself hostage. I need you to understand what I mean when I say phantoms, when I talk about being in the phantom zone. The phantom zone is that cesspool of memory that's packed with all of this trauma, packed with all of this negative emotion, packed with all of this negative belief. And it's polluting the way that you see the world, the behaviors that you are consciously and unconsciously choosing. Even if you believe you are no longer that person, you'd be amazed at how powerful these phantoms from the past can be. Oh, you'd be amazed. Let's begin our lesson here. The principle, the pattern, the path. You know I love teaching from principle. But before I do, don't think I don't see you in the chat. Sublime, what is happening? Okay, twin. I see you. I see you. Welcome in, twin. Okay. Furrer. Some of y'all, I don't know your name. I want you to put your name in the chat so that I can shout you out right here on the Breakthrough Live, because we definitely want to make sure that you get some of that clear energy. Eric Hen. Eric, welcome in. Folks, we're talking about the phantom zone. We're talking about being able to get out of the phantom zone, to be able to reason from first principles. Because once we understand the principle of how something works, we can find our own path. We can find our own methodology. But first, I have to understand the principle. Let's get to that right now. Okay, Twin is saying awareness is everything. At what point did you know or feel you were holding yourself hostage? Um, when I couldn't stop the thoughts. Twin, so Twin is getting right to it. Right to it. At what point did you know you were getting? He says, at what point did you know or feel you were holding yourself hostage? When the point was, so good of a question, Twin. The point was, that point came when I was looking in the mirror, realizing that I was having this memory and realizing that the memory still carried a negative signature, an energetic signature that was actually operating in my chest. I could feel it dropping my frequency. I could feel it as if it was happening all over again. Every time the memory hit, it was as if it was happening all over again. I said, "Oh, this ain't current. This ain't current events. Like, what? This is not happening right now. Why should I feel as if it is, and not just the situation?" Because what happens is you have the memory of, oh, how should I get out of this? But then you also kind of count your little blessings. Them $2 that was in my pocket, I was kind of like, okay, cool. What would have happened had I not had the two? You know what I'm saying? Like, was she to call security on a pimp? Like, you know what I'm saying? All of a sudden, you're getting, you know, what would have happened? And so, what would have happened? I start going down these different rabbit holes, and now I'm still standing in the mirror holding the toothbrush, but it's been 10 minutes, and I haven't started brushing my teeth yet. Mm, I know somebody feels me. Say yes in the chat if you've been there before. I know somebody feels me where it's like, wait, I've been standing here in my head thinking about something that is not currently happening and allowing it to affect me psychoneurologically to the point where I leave my present conditions and I'm back in the past, sweating, choking, nervous, looking at people. Mm-mm. Twin says, feel you. Yes, sir. His other twin says, yes, yes, yes. He said, twin says, oh, heck yeah. Okay, so he threw that in there twice. But yeah, so that was the moment. That was the moment, champ. And it was like, okay, what what do you do about that? What do you do? So what you do, what you do is remember this principle. Actually, let's go ahead and get to the principle before I keep you jumping. Let me see what I'm so this is what I'm talking about here. This is what I'm talking about here. We need to understand the principle of a thing. We need to understand the principle really behind the solutions. Then we'll unpack the pattern behind the thinking that would even necessitate a solution. And then we'll identify the path forward. So, the only principle that I want you to know tonight, make sure we get anything. Here we go. What I want you to know is that love rewrites or elevates the human nervous system. What I want you to know is that love rewrites, which is to say, it elevates. Love elevates the human nervous system. Now, when I say love, I'm not just talking about just an emotion. I'm talking about the totality of reality. I'm talking about the felt sense of oneness. I'm talking about the deep connection to all that is. It can be harnessed as an emotion, utilized as an emotion, sent as an emotion, felt as an emotion. The emotion is divine. That's just not all there is to it. You understand? So once we can tap into this frequency, once we can tap into the feeling of love, the emotion is key. But once we can not just feel the emotion, but begin to use it, we can overwrite and even rewrite our nervous system. So let me explain. Let me explain how this worked for me. Let me explain what I'm saying. Remember, I was saying I was in the bathroom essentially holding a toothbrush for 10 minutes, and I was like, hold on. By the time I came back to the present moment, I had already felt all of the feels. It was as if my nervous system, as if it was as if my nervous system was back in the past, feeling all of the things that should have been processed in that moment, but carrying them forward all the way to present day. That's an issue. That's an issue. So what I had to do, sitting there looking at the into the mirror, I closed my eyes and went directly to the memory itself. Mhm. But when I send love to the clerk, I go back in my mind into the memory itself with the woman, the clerk, saying, but are you gonna pay for this envelope though? I go right back to that situation. Recall the smells, the lights, the texture of the desk of the post office, the people on the line. Go right back to that memory. Right as she's saying, but are you gonna pay for this envelope? Right at that moment, I take the feeling of love that I can feel in the present moment and I take it back into this memory and I begin to share that feeling of love with every single thing that is inside of the memory. I begin to send love to everything that is inside of that memory. If I was the one that was adding meaning, if I was the one that was adding a negative meaning to the situation, could I be also the one that adds love to the situation? How might that change me? How might that change the way I feel? How might that change the way I remember? See, when I send the love to the clerk in my memory, just as she says, but are you still going to pay for that envelope though? Just as she says that, the memory still plays as before, but now it has no power. The memory still plays. It's still, I can still, everything's still, but now it has no power. Everything in that memory gets doused with love. It changes how I associate meaning to the memory, changes what I believe about the memory. And therefore, it changes the memory, even without changing the events. Someone say, you understand. Say, I understand. That's because in the place of that overwhelming embarrassment crawling up my throat is just love. In the place of that overwhelming embarrassment is love. I see clearly how love applied to memory rewires me psychoneurologically, reprogramming me in an instant. I can see how love applied to memory rewires my psychoneurological programming in an instant. And watch this. It only costs $2. And it only costs $2. You see, that's the difference. That $2 just 20 minutes ago meant something completely different than it does once I have tapped into the divine origin, the fundamental fabric of existence. Once I have returned to clarity, all of a sudden that $2 takes on a different meaning. The most important lesson of my life. And it only costs $2. Someone say you understand. If you understand.